Ready to go? Is this thing on? Testing?
No. AES sold it to Postelnikoff and 4 other investment companies. AES filed foreclosure.
We already did.
And paid them.
All right. It is now 6:30. 6:30. I call this meeting to order.
Right after right before the auction was going to happen.
Your thing's on.
The bankruptcy, which stops the auction.
Am I on? Testing? I don't think so.
Not loud enough.
Hello? Testing?
Yeah. Well, that's why I filed
Maybe.
bankruptcy.
Just give me a signal.
Yeah.
I guess not.
No, I can't hear you.
Okay, we're good.
Audio is great.
Is it?
Well, that's all we need
Okay,
to know.
that's it.
Perfect. All right. Well, I call this meeting to order. It's 6:30, 52 seconds. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Walters.
Here.
Commissioner Light.
Present.
Commissioner Callahan.
Present?
Chair Bauer.
I'm here.
And for the record, Commissioner Kilroy, Commissioner Krazan, and Commissioner Carlson are all absent, excused absences, but we do have a quorum and we can conduct business.
Perfect. Thank you so much. May I ask Commissioner Light to lead us in the salute to the flag?
You may.
All right.
I may not do it, but you can ask. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved.
Second. Okay.
All right. Blue folder items.
Yes, we did have some blue folder items for item L1, which is our discussion on the bike safety at the pier. Included in that blue folder was the PowerPoint presentation for tonight, some photos of the pier area itself, a video of the path, just to kind of give us some wherewithal there, and the admin report and the Exhibit A barrier map. So all 5 of those items are in there. And that was it.
And right now we accept that, right? We bring those materials in. Is that right now?
What was that?
Well, is there a motion to move to accept those materials in right now?
I think we moved
Yes.
the receive
They're
and
already in.
file.
Receive and file, right?
So moved.
Second.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Good. All right. Now going to the consent calendar. We have F1 and F2, approval of affidavit of posting for the Harbor Commission meeting, and of course, approval of the following minutes. Any discussion on the minutes or?
No.
No? All right, can I get a
Motion
motion?
to approve?
Second.
All right, so moved. Excluded consent calendar items, I don't believe there are any.
Do not have any.
Public participation on non-agenda items. Is there any public participation on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we move on. And let's go, and any e-comments or emails received from the public?
There are no e-comments at this time, and we have one attendee. Mark Hansen, would you like to speak? Please raise your hand.
No.
Mark's obviously running a little late. All right. All right, ex parte communication.
We don't have any.
Don't have any,
No.
yeah, we don't.
Public hearing.
And no public hearings.
So
No public hearings. News continued from previous agendas. I don't think there's anything.
Nope.
Items L, items for discussion prior to action.
Nope.
L1, yeah, discussion and possible action regarding the existing safety measures for bikes and pedestrians at the pier.
Thank you. We do have Dave Shirobi, he's a senior management analyst with our Waterfront Economic Development Department. He's going to be walking you guys through a little PowerPoint presentation that summarizes the staff report, and he's got some guest appearances from other staff members from Public Works, Ted Simon, our Public Works Director, as well as some representatives from our police department to support him. Take it away.
Good evening, Harbor Commission. Thank you so much for giving us the time to come before you today. We did prepare a report for you on a discussion and possible action regarding the existing safety measures in regards to bikes and pedestrians in the pier area. This report was created in collaboration with the Police Department as well as Public Works. And what generated this report was some discussion and an item that came up in the February 13th Harbor Commission commission meeting in regards to some of the bicycle traffic and the current existing rules that are there in the pier regarding that. So essentially this report, we're aiming to give kind of an overview of the situation as it is, as well as make a comparison to a very comprehensive report that was put together in 2016, where some recommendations were made, and we're doing some follow-up on that, as well as making some recommendations as the situation exists in 2023. So I want to first point out that pursuant to Municipal Code 12207, bicycle riding is prohibited on any portion of any pier, wharf, public area, parking structure, or city-owned property where posted. And then city staff in the past has had kind of some discretion in where we can identify areas as being high traffic or where there is a potential safety issue posed by bicycle traffic in order to limit or put restrictions on that bicycle riding. So the process of identifying that signage and identifying where it should be placed is generally left to staff, but we do have existing signage that we have some recommendations on changes that could be made, and we've come here to seek your feedback and hopefully your support, but also your input as well too. So the report as it is highlighted some of the signage that exists in the harbor area. The past report that was conducted in 2016 did explore the idea of setting flashing lights for a walk bike sign on a timer, and that enforcement would not happen during certain hours when there was limited or low pedestrian activity. Now, feedback from police department and another of the departments at the time has indicated that the current system requiring cyclists to walk their bikes through the pier area is necessary at this time to maximize safety and minimize accidents. Now, as part of this follow-up, we did want to say that placement of signs does stand in an area where we could make some improvements. You'll notice in the photo here in the presentation that we've put up a very bright walk bike sign right there along that overhang. This is a section where bike traffic and pedestrian traffic often interlaps, and it's a high traffic area where the potential for accidents can happen. There's been numerous signs that have been posted over the years based on various recommendations. And we do have some suggestions on how to improve it, but this particular area is what we've kind of identified as a very high traffic area. Now, on the lead up to this area and this section of the pier, PD and other staff have made a few modifications to encourage cyclists to walk their bikes in this area. We've used high visibility signs. One recommendation that we've received from members of the public and members of the cycling community has been that, oftentimes bicyclists will be focused looking down towards the ground. They won't necessarily be looking up. So we've kind of tried to hit them from different angles with signs that's, more at ground level, but also signage that's up above, so that we can kind of reach them from multiple points where they can see that they need to walk their bikes throughout this particular area. This is another section where the path has been identified as an area where we want cyclists to be walking their bikes. Again, this is heading into the parking structure. This is on the north side heading southbound, going into the parking structure right up above kind of where Quality Seafood is. You can see that the flashing lights were implemented based off of that recommendation from the past. And currently that light is not on a timer. So that light will be on pretty much 24/7 to ensure that regardless of the conditions, whether it's in this photo here, if you look down towards the ground, you can see that there's some bricks, and due to the inclement weather that has been present this year, it's not unusual for this area to be wet. And in those cases, though traffic may be low during certain hours, we are recommending that we encourage cyclists to ride their bikes through areas that are potentially hazardous due to inclement weather, traffic, other potential obstacles that might be encountered by a cyclist who's going through this area. Some suggestions that we have been making has been areas where we can update signage to make the messaging more clear to cyclists who are going through the area. Some signage is required, and some signage, we do have some opportunities to make adjustments to hopefully get the message through a little more clearly on what sections of the pier area we want cyclists to walk their bike and which sections they're free to ride through. So we do have some suggestions on signage that we can update and remove. One potential suggestion we could make would be seen up here in this image, where you have a pedestrian walk symbol and then a 5 mile per hour sign. That's something that we could either remove or update to kind of help avoid confusion from cyclists on whether they're supposed to be riding or walking. And we have another image here as well too, and some suggested updates. In this case, we have some clear pedestrian signage, but also bike signage. And you can see some of the signage has been defaced or deteriorated over time. And then we also have a little bit more feedback as well on certain parts of the path where we're going to make recommendations based off of physical experience out in the field with cyclists and where we're seeing the most high traffic areas. So another suggestion that was made back in 2016 was to repaint and install new center lines, lane lines, and pavement markers for improved bike path guidance. There were some areas where we were able to successfully implement this and kind of make it a little bit more clear and create a separation and a physical barrier, particularly in the area right along the parking structure in the pier where there's kind of that separation. Sorry, I wish I had a laser pointer to show you, but kind of, close to where the rocks. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Greg.
There you go.
So if you can see my cursor, kind of along the area here where, in between where the restrooms are and where there's kind of the curve and the bike path as it heads up towards Quality Seafood, there's been a physical separation that's implemented there that has proved very effective at preventing traffic between cyclists and pedestrians from interlapping. Now, there are still high traffic, conflict points, we'll call them, where pedestrians have to cross over into that bike lane when they're moving to their vehicles in the parking structure or back. But we do have some suggestions on updated signage we can still implement and ways that we can help improve the safety of those crossings. Now, another suggestion that was made in the past has been related to conflict areas and paint striping. And these are areas where there is a little bit of a give and take where we could implement more paint along the floor of the path, but that could also create a potential hazard if it's slick or it's wet, where that paint could then become more of a hazard than it helps. So there are certain areas where we could implement things like that, but there's other areas where it may do more harm than good. So we do have some suggestions in that regard. But essentially, our goal has been to continue to enforce the safety of the bike path by encouraging and enforcing the walking of bikes throughout this area. There are some other similar ideas that nearby cities have implemented, such as barriers that can kind of form sort of chicanes. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Ted can probably correct me there, but essentially physical barriers that would in some way slow down traffic so that there are areas where the risk of a collision between a cyclist and a pedestrian or a cyclist potentially slipping on a wet surface would be reduced through this. Now, it should be noted that some of the current signage that may seem difficult for some cyclists to understand, that some of that signage is required, and we do have some concerns again about paint that we could implement, and some of the potential hazards that could form as well too. So currently, Staff's recommendation as it stands is to maintain the current prohibition of cycling through this designated area, going through Quality Seafood up to the end of the pier there. But we do want to see new and updated signage in areas where it's practical to help make it more clear and easier for cyclists to recognize the sections where they do need to dismount from their bikes and walk through. So I do also want to provide an opportunity for PD as well as Public Works to give some background and some reasoning on elaborating on why we're supporting this position. Do you guys want to?
Hold on a second.
Sure, go
I'll
ahead.
summarize a little bit. So,
Great.
Thank you, Dave. So really, I think the discussion for tonight is, you've got a few options here. One is you could support staff's recommendation, which is to keep it as is and improve the signage to make it less confusing. Or you can choose to lift the prohibition altogether, and in which case we don't need the signs, right? Or you could choose to do some kind of a 50-50, 70-30 split based on time of the day, whether it would be enforced or not, which in that case, we would need to update the signage to make it more clear again. So, I leave it to you to kind of talk that through. We do have our representatives here that may be able to answer any questions that you may have to help guide the discussion a little bit. But
Going to talk it all to the drawing you attached to this,
yeah,
Sure.
which that shows
So
a whole
that's-
bunch of barriers.
so the barriers aren't necessarily a recommendation that we're having tonight, but we wanted to let you know that we're open to the idea. And if you decided you wanted to support such an idea, this was kind of the design that we were thinking. So it's just another topic of discussion.
Well, thank you so much. I guess I'll just lead it off by saying that what is currently being implemented is quite a walk. I ride through there myself, and if you do stop where you're supposed to stop and walk all the way through, it really adds quite a bit to your journey. And as you're going underneath the parking structure, rarely do you see anybody actually crossing that area. And often you don't, depending on when you're riding, if you're riding early in the morning, whatever, there's nobody around at all, right? There's very few cars, and it just seems like it's quite the delay and almost encourages people to disregard those signs. Just my take. The logic behind why underneath the parking structure, I would have a question about that, because it just doesn't seem like in that area you're separated from the people. I get there's some areas where the public would cross that bike path, but it's clearly marked. And maybe some signs to suggest yield to the pedestrians and also to the pedestrians to keep an eye on it. But they're not really there's not very few times have I ever seen anybody even cross there, even when it's busy. But that's my time. Yes, Commissioner Light.
So just to add to your comments, I bike commuted this for over 3 years, and I regularly bike on the weekends. So I frequent this when it's busy and when it's empty. And I will tell you, and Greg, I have some pictures today. I don't know if you can
we've got 'em.
post any of
Bring
those.
'em up.
But I went down there today at lunch just to see what it would, what kind of traffic was out there.
Go to the PowerPoint. I made a PowerPoint. Yeah.
Skate park.
Nice.
Let's see.
Go back.
Let's see. This one.
Yeah.
So first off, the first thing you see when you're coming up to the pier now is $300 fine. Go to the next picture. Strictly enforced. Go to the next picture. Oops, sorry, got out of order. It says walk bikes,
Yeah, like that.
right? And that's what you see when you walk down to the pier now is blinking sign, strictly enforced, $300 fine. And then go to the other pictures. That's how many people were on the pier today at lunchtime, right? And now go through that's what it looked like when you look at that's going, they're out of order somehow, but that's going to transition to the north side. That's the blinking light, which I have no idea why there's a blinking light there then, because that's in the actual pier parking structure. It's not the part of most contention. But you can see there is not a whole lot of traffic down there at this time to make people get off. And even the old staff report, which I was on this commission when it came out, said to turn it on all the time would probably lead to people not complying, which I think is exactly what we're seeing. We put it out there, it was supposed to be turned on for heavy traffic and turned off like the other piers are. And we never did that. We turned them on and now we're surprised that people aren't following it ever. Well, actually on the weekends, it's better followed than when I would commute down there at the, in the morning, because there are people who get off there and you can't ride through them. They get off their bikes and you have to stop. And even if you do go, you're going like 2 miles an hour to negotiate them. So I am unaware. I tried to go on the police reporting system for, incidents throughout the city, the interactive map. I couldn't find a single incident of a bicycle versus a pedestrian or a car in this vicinity. And so it seems to me we're trying to solve a problem that really isn't there. And we're, in my view, exacerbating it because we're going to promote people doing it because it's stupid to enforce when there's nobody out there. Already, that parking lot is slippery. When it's wet, it's that, and you have at least two 90-degree turns in there. So people can't fly through there like they do on the Hermosa bike path where it's a straight shot for, 2 miles. So it's a totally different situation. And you do have pedestrians crossing. And I honestly think the pedestrian crossings are well marked for a bicyclist. So you're going to get people who don't care. I mean, we got electric bikes who are crossing intersections, busy car intersections. And so you're going to have those kind of people, and this won't do anything. The other thing, if you put those barricades in as we're shown there, that's like almost a quarter mile of walking your bike, which if you have bike cleats on, that's ridiculous. I don't know if you ever tried to walk with bike cleats on, but it's not comfortable. And it breaks your whole stride. You're sitting there riding, then you got to get off and walk. And if you ever watched bicyclists when, for example, at the volleyball tournament that Manhattan Beach has, if you ever watch bicyclists try to negotiate that in 2 directions at the same time, it's a major traffic jam of bicyclists trying to comply. And makes it very inconvenient, and people are banging their bikes onto the barricades and stuff drops off their packs and stuff like that. It's just it's a 22-mile bike path. We did a great job through the years. It's improved since I've been on the Harbor Commission of separating that pedestrian crossing from the parking lot out. And you talked about how we filled some of those voids. So there's less likelihood of people jumping the chain to try to get a shortcut onto the pier. And it's confined to a couple areas. And I say, I'm all for when it's busy, putting the flashing signs on and enforcing it. But when there's nobody down there, it's overkill. Maybe fine them for going fast if they're going over the 5 miles an hour or something like that. But don't make them get off their bikes. And then if you went along, after you leave that going north, there's more pedestrian crossings there than there are in the parking structure. And I've had people, they come down the elevators from the top of the parking structure there, and it's a blind turn for them. They don't even see that there's a bike path coming. And I've been closer to hitting people there than anywhere else because their kids run out because they just got off the elevator, and it's a blind wall. You can't see them till they dart out. This area to me is not the problem area. So I am strongly against this. Maybe fix some. There are confusing signs because some say walk the bikes at all time. Some say walk when it's flashing. And I can agree, maybe you think the pedestrians are supposed to go 5 miles an hour, but I think the warnings of pedestrians are ample through there that people know, and where vehicles may cross. So I'm dead against overburdening bicyclists when we should be proud to be part of a 22-mile bike path, not making bicyclists an enemy of the state. And Hermosa, I talked to Hermosa Public Works last week. So they think right now that they're probably, if it wasn't temporary, they'd be in violation of the Coastal Act because it's been a bike path for more than 2 decades. And so they are looking at alternate solutions, but we're not in their boat. They don't separate pedestrian traffic from bike traffic at all. So they're in a different boat, and the people walk along the bike path in Hermosa, and they have one dotted line down the middle, but one side's not bike and one side's not pedestrian. It's all pedestrian. So it's a little bit different situation, and they told me their barricades are temporary. You go to Manhattan Beach, yeah, they close it for big events, and on weekends, really close to crossing at the pier. And I think that's what we should consider, is right at that main crossing, the main entrance to the pier, maybe put up temporary barricades for those weekends and turn on the flashing lights, but they do it all the time. People are just going to find alternate ways through there. Today, some of the serious bicyclists and some of the e-bikers are getting off this path and cutting through the garage into traffic. And we're just going to force them to do that more. And I don't think that's what we want to force.
Thank you,
So that's
Commissioner.
my,
Thank you, Commissioner Light. Any, yes. Commissioner Callahan.
The one thing I wanted to comment was the orange barricades. I don't know how many of you have worked with 12, 13, and 14-year-old young adults, but they're just going to zig through the parking lot. They already do. If the flashing light's on, they just go zinging through the parking lot. My husband has a handicap pass, so we usually park in the handicap area, and getting out of the car can be treacherous as it is. I think the orange barricades, even if you put them up, it's going to be dangerous for the people trying to pass each other getting through there. I'm more concerned with the speed. I don't think we necessarily have to walk. On busy weekends, during the summer, that area in front of the public bathrooms at the entrance to the pier, that area should always be a get off and walk. But I'm more concerned with the speed, especially with the e-bikes. I've been almost hit twice. So that's my comment.
and that's not just a problem here.
Well, and if you're going to paint signs, let's do it on the ground. There's flat paint you can use. It doesn't have to be shiny, as well as the posted stuff at eye level. I think the international signs are better than ones that have words, because we have a lot of foreign visitors who stay at the Shade, stay at Sonesta, and they stay at Portofino, and they're either given or rented bicycles. And I think for us to get their attention, we need international signs.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? Yes.
In regards to the barriers, my understanding is that when staff was out there, they had a few different areas they were able to kind of test the locations and where they felt was more optimal. So maybe I can invite at some point either Public Works or PD to kind of come up and give kind of an explanation of what areas they explored with the barriers and why they kind of identified the areas that they did do.
And Public Works Director Ted Simon's going to come up and address that. And I'd also ask you to maybe touch on paint on the ground. Any concerns you have with that?
The map. Yeah.
It's on your presentation.
There we
Yes,
go.
good evening, Commissioners. Ted Simon, I'm the Public Works Director for the city. When we went out, we were looking at means of, let's say, encouraging, because we're receiving complaints, as is PD, from pedestrians as well as from bicyclists, that the pedestrians want the bicyclists to dismount and actually walk through these points of conflict, where we're hearing the bicyclists saying, well, this is a bike path. We want to be able to ride through the bike path and not necessarily dismount. It's been a difficult situation from our perspective, let alone from PD's perspective, and I'll let them communicate that portion of it. But this particular area, it's really as you enter the pier parking structure, and whether that be on the north end or on the south end, those are not only points of conflict, but they're the beginning of points of conflict. On the south end, everybody has spoken that as you exit, we'll call it the County Beach Bike Path, there is signage, there are signs out there, old signs, new signs, that tell the riders to dismount as they're approaching the pier parking structure. When they get to the pier parking structure, we have the restrooms, which everyone identifies as a point of conflict. But even before the restrooms, you've got the walkway for people that are coming in from Torrance Boulevard Circle and what have you. Those are points of conflict with pedestrians. Once you enter it, the northbound rider, having the chicanes and or further enforcement, if you will, is to remind the riders that they are not supposed to be riding through that area. When you go beyond the restroom, that set of barricades that we placed out there is really more intended for the southbound riders, not necessarily for the northbound riders. But you can't separate them because it is a narrow path area. It's barely 10 feet plus. But I'll continue on. As you approach the curve, and that's the 90-degree curve there as you separate the South Pier parking structure from the North Pier parking structure. That's an area that we have had complaints, we've had claims filed against the city. That's an area that's susceptible to moisture, whether it be from the mist of the waves or on high windy days where we get actual water that comes up, not just the mist. It's slippery. The material, the membrane that we have to keep, basically it's a waterproof membrane to keep the decks from seeping water into the next, which, as we know, the seepage of water in concrete that's reinforced is detrimental, which is why we're spending a lot of time and money trying to repair that pier parking structure. But that material was reinforced again with more non-slip materials on it. Yet, because it's still a polymer, it's still to a degree slippery. So for me as an engineer, I'd say, yeah, that set of barricades, just as you approach them, is to, again, if the rider is not wanting to willingly get off their bikes, it's to encourage them with the barricades to say, please get off your bikes. Now, we've seen when we ran out there, and I think the picture that Dave showed earlier, we modeled it just to see what and how we can get the barricades to sort of work. But I'll tell you, even if you approve this tonight or the city council approves it when it eventually goes to them, this is going to be a dynamic situation because we don't think a one-time setup is going to be the fix-all for all of this. We think that there may be changes and modifications that we'll have to do as we go along. But we set up that chicane setup, that's the word, chicane, where we space them enough so that someone with a little trailer behind them can actually walk their bike and not have the trailer hit the barricade. But we also saw some of the real avid cyclists be able to literally crawl around them, which we know that they can. And, you know, the more you space them apart, the easier it becomes for the rider. Does it force them to slow down if they do that? Yes. But again, the idea is that they get to walk through this, not necessarily to ride through this. I heard a lot about the points of conflict for a rider and or a person that's walking their bikes. 7 feet was the distance, the nominal distance that we agreed upon when we were out there. Is that the optimal distance? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe 7 feet. 7 feet in between the barricades. We think, you know, at 7 feet, maybe it needs to be modified. 2 riders, one going in one direction, the other in the other direction, can pass each other, walking their bikes. They may have to pull over, wait a little bit for the other one to get through the tighter part of the curve. It's doable. Is it doable for 2 riders to go through? I'm not certain. But again, the idea is to dismount the bike, not necessarily to encourage them to walk the bike. Dave, go back to the other drawing, please. And then once you pass it, there are multiple points of conflict there in that separation of the South Pier parking structure and the North Pier parking structure. There are vehicular conflicts, bicyclist conflicts, pedestrian conflicts there, which is why we're encouraging the placement of these barricades in between the entry point and the exit point of the North Pier parking structure, because the pedestrians walk back and forth, the vehicles go back and forth, and for the vehicular drivers, especially the ones coming out of the pier parking structure, they are very limited in their visibility. They've got a solid wall with a limited opening for them to exit, which there are precautionary signs for them. Nevertheless, the slower the speed of that potential conflict, the easier or the better it is for the 2 conflicting movements to be able to see each other. And then as you get to the northerly end, where it is over quality seafood, that was intended more for the southbound rider than it is for the northbound rider, and not so much that you could separate it, you know, by allowing the barricades to be there for a southbound rider without impacting a northbound rider. Because at that point, with exception to the elevator opening and pedestrians coming in and out of that elevator, that gets reduced. So you've got the 2 vehicular openings, pedestrian conflicts in each of those 2 openings, as well as the elevator. In the southbound direction, when you're entering the pier parking structure, you're going from a generally lighted condition, bright condition, to a very dark condition. There we want that bicycle rider to dismount and walk, because we've talked about the pedestrian conflicts that they're approaching at the separation of the north and the south pier parking structure. The middle section in between the entrance and exit point of the North Rear parking structure is the same reasoning as I explained a couple of seconds earlier, but also, more particularly for that rider that's going westerly to go south, is to dismount and walk through that tight curve. We don't want them riding at full speed. And full speed has a different meaning to a lot of riders. Some can go really fast, some have wider tires, some have narrower tires. Because we've had the complaints, because we've had some of the claims come against the city, we want to continue to encourage and really enforce the walking through that area rather than having people slip it. When you come around the curve and you're entering, we'll call it the stretch. The stretch is the area between the curve and the restrooms down there. That again was more intended for the northbound rider, not so much for the southbound rider. That area, if I had to say, can I choose an area where you could let the cyclist continue to ride, I would say yes to that, because that's a very secluded, protected, if you will, because you've got the bollards, you've got the chains that separate the pedestrians from the bicyclists. Can a rider go between the barricades by the curve to the barricades right before the restrooms? Yeah, I can see them doing that without necessarily having a direct conflict with the pedestrians. There should be no direct conflict with the pedestrians. But when they reach that point at the south end, yes, that's where the restrooms are, that's where that potential and the conflict exists. And obviously, depending on the season, depending on the time of day, the temperature of the day, that conflict can increase significantly, or it could be minimized to a certain thing. And then as you come around and out of the parking structure on the south end, that is still a walk your bike area as you go through the wide open area opening into the pier, as well as the area just before you reach the county bike path. So that's sort of the theory behind it. We felt if we put 2 to 3 barricades, it's not going to really implement it. The number that we recommended was 6, 3 alternating on either side of it. The area between the north and south pier parking structure, it is a little bit narrower. It's going to have to be a little bit shorter. That we don't have much of a choice on, but ideally we'd like to see 6 barricades installed at those locations. Available for any questions?
All right, thank you so much. Yes, yes, Commissioner Lloyd.
So you're advocating barriers at all 5 or testing them at different locations and see how they do?
I'm advocating for the effectiveness at all 5. For bicycle riders to continue to ride, I think my concern is the points of conflict. The south end from the pier parking structure towards the county beach bike path, there's a lot of pedestrian conflict. From the entry to the pier parking structure to the north side of the restrooms, there's a lot of pedestrian conflicts between riders and pedestrians, and I would advocate for that to be there, for the barricades to be there. Around the curve, I am advocating for those 2 because of the curve condition, the potential slippery condition, and then on the in between the curve and the northerly exit out of the pier parking structure, I advocated for it because of the multiple pedestrian and vehicular conflicts. What I'm saying is the area truly between the curve on the north end and the restrooms on the south end, that to me is very well defined, very well protected. I don't see any problems with the riders, bicycle riders to ride their bikes in there. I measured it, it was about 350 feet or 330 feet. Is that going to get substantially reduced with the installation of the barricades? And the answer is yes, that would be.
I have a question. If this was implemented, what's the distance that a bicyclist would have to walk?
I did not measure all that. Dave, do you remember measuring that at all?
I don't have that specific number, but that's
Give me
definitely information that we
I
can
will
get.
tell you.
I just did it on
That being
Google Earth.
said,
It's about 0.2 of a mile.
Okay.
It's about 600 feet because I measured the area from the restrooms to the curve, and that was about 330 feet. And the rest of it looks about the same if I was to just scale
I
it.
just did it on Google Earth and it was about 0.2 of a mile.
0.2 of
which
a
is
mile.
about 900 feet.
Okay. And how many feet in a block?
A block?
Yeah.
What's a block?
Block.
A city
A city block.
Oh, more than that.
Varies so much. You could be anywhere from, if you were to say 40 feet to a home or a single family property.
So are we looking at 2
400,
blocks?
Possibly,
Okay.
or a block and a half, yeah.
All right. I'm trying to get, for people to get an idea of how long the distance is to walk.
And for us, when we walked it, it wasn't so much of how long the actual distance is where it was more for me as an engineer looking at it as where are those points of conflict and what are some of the things that we need to do to help mitigate that and what are the best measures to help do that.
I guess this is a question for the police department. I'll wait. I was going to find out how many conflicts we have reported.
No question. Sure,
I
Commissioner
still
Light.
had one more question. So we had a similar problem when you put the rubber coating on concrete to protect it, you know, the barrier to liquids coming through. At a launch pad that I worked on, and what we did was we put almost like what you see on the decks of boats, right? A silica based. It almost feels like sandpaper when you rub along it. And I'm just wondering why we don't do that on top of whatever you've got there.
Because an adhesive on top of an adhesive in that sense, we've had a lot of that peel off and it starts to create different sets of hazards. As a matter of fact, when you exit the pier parking structure, going over quality seafood, coming around to the rest of the bike path, you'll see that that area actually needs to be recoated. A lot of that prior coating has started to rip up and come up. And we're often having to go out there and actually cut that off and clean it rather than allow it to continue.
Yeah, we never cut through the liquid barrier layer, but it did wear off on the sand stuff, and wasn't that hard to repaint.
Understood. It's just that we would see it becoming another layer of potential material that's going to get damaged, create another point of conflict or different conflict, and it wouldn't necessarily resolve that situation.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Carlson.
Thanks. Quick comment on that. I've had a really hard time bonding stuff to concrete, especially when there's already some kind of oil like here on the concrete. It's a tough surface. Thanks a lot for this. I reached out to a friend of mine who's in a bike club, and asked him and his club what they thought of this and what they recommended. And it's just as people said. It's a tough spot. There's no great solution. He's in his 70s. He's not one of the young adults you were talking about, but he said the same thing. The more barricades you put up, people start to cut through the space. So, two comments or two things to look out for. I'm worried we start to see more people just cutting through other places, and I'm also worried about that when the skate park comes online.
Yeah.
Because I don't see the easy path. I've mentioned this before. I don't see the easy path from the bike path to the skate park. Maybe you end up skating down that curved ramp, which looks like fun. Maybe you end up sliding down that stairway next to Quality Seafood, which looks like fun. So we'll see how that goes, and how many more people that drives into this area. A more optimistic comment, we've talked about better wayfinding and better paths and stuff in the amenities plan, and that if we get better paths and better wayfinding, that may pull walkers off of the path in other parts of the bike path, north of the pier area, maybe even in this area. So, maybe we fix this problem by looking at the wayfinding and where we have walkers going. My friend actually broke his leg in this area, just on the south end of the straightaway. I got to find out exactly where, but he got tangled up in pedestrians, fell off his bike, and broke his leg. So it has happened. One other question I have, and this may be a police question, is if you had somebody going through there really fast, is there any cap? Is there any speed limit? What keeps a motorcycle off this? What keeps an e-bike doing 45 miles an hour off this? Are we protected?
I will let PD answer that part of it, but I'm going to give you the engineering answer to it. David, one of the slides showed the pedestrian and the 5 mile, the 5 underneath it. That is an advanced pedestrian warning sign. It is a California MUTC requirement that says, hey, you're going to have a point of conflict with a pedestrian. We want to warn you as a bicycle rider that that's coming up. The 5, yes, that's an advisory. It's advisory because it's yellow. Speed limit for the bicycle rider. Have we established an actual speed limit out there? We would have to go through an engineering and traffic survey to do that. That may be more challenging than people think, not just from the establishment of the ENT survey, but even from the enforcement of it, because you're going to be trying to catch a rider with LiDAR at a very short distance and very quick manner. I'm not certain that the speed is a concern, and I'll let the police department talk about that. But in order to establish a speed limit, would have to come through our office for an ENT survey, and those are going to be very challenging for a bike path. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, again, I don't have any great solution here. Obviously, it's not easy. I think more about offering a carrot of a good path, and it may be impossible to offer a good path to a bicycle, but it may be possible to offer a good path to a pedestrian. Get them out of the way. So, thanks. Oh,
Any
and,
questions for me, or turn it over to BB?
Can I say this before I apologize for being late? Thanks.
No, I only have one comment, which is I go through there and I walk it, and it's horrendous. It's just way too long of a walk, just even without the barricades. It's just too. I mean, you're on a bike to get someplace, right? I mean, otherwise you'd walk to where you're going. But I'm trying to get someplace generally, and to have to stop and walk that entire distance makes it really, really difficult.
I tell you, my younger years, I was an avid cyclist as well. Don't do that anymore, sorry. But sand and water or moisture are your two worst enemies when you're riding in some of these places. That's all I'm going to say. And we've got both in these locations.
Yes, Commissioner Light?
Nothing for.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned, and we've talked about this, forcing the traffic elsewhere. If we make it too tough to get it through there, people I think from the north side going south will cut through the parking garage. Some of them do it today. I think on the other way, you'll just bike around the whole thing and then come in at the 90 degree and bypass the whole thing. Or go down, like you were saying, down the ramp, around the whole International Boardwalk, and then back onto the bike path, which is a worst case to me. People do bike that today to get to Nages and stuff like that. I just saw it today when I was walking it. An electric bicyclist came down from Kincaid's and was barrel-assing down excuse my French, down that ramp, down to the lower part of the parking, or the International Boardwalk there. And I don't know which one he was going to, but it was clear he's heading to the International Boardwalk. The interference with the elevator there on the east side, the top of the drawing, there is a separate, no, up higher, right there. There is a separated pedestrian path there, so it's not like they come out and walk right onto the bike path. That's already a separated pedestrian path, and I've not had interference there. I have had some at the 90-degree turn because that is a path people tend to cut across from the parking structure to get out towards Kincaid's and that side of the pier. So I have had it there. But the thing is, this is not the normal width of a bike path. It's narrow in each direction. It's hard to pass somebody safely when you don't know what they're doing. And so it starts on weekends when it's busy to self-regulate, because you got somebody on a cruiser with their big handles wobbling. You're not going to go by on your road bike at 20 miles an hour trusting that they're not going to plow into you. And same with people coming the other way. They'll sometimes ride two abreast. This is not the normal width of a bike path. So that automatically limits it. The 90 degrees limits it unless you're a daredevil. And then at the end, there's usually barricades across there that force you to at least slow down. And if anybody's stopped and gotten off their bike, you have to stop. I'm also concerned that the major point of contention that I've seen is the main entrance, right, to the pier off of Torrance. And this does nothing to address that at all. The area that's kind of, once you hit the bathroom and then go underneath the overhang, people wander through that, not just to go to the bathroom, just to get out of the sun or to get their family together. So that's a point of contention too, and yet we're not doing anything until they're way inside the parking structure. So the biggest point of contention I saw as a bike rider is, we'll put some signs out there, but we're really going to penalize anybody that follows the bike path through the parking structure. And I mean, I would have, rather than take 5 different obstacles walking, I would go to the outside and ride down there and count that a police officer not going to stand there and get me on that day at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning or whatever it is when nobody else is out there. I think it's much safer to keep that. Well, I would turn it into a real 5-mile-an-hour speed limit, not as suggested, and use judgment and nail people who are speeding on it. I mean, you can tell somebody on an e-bike going 15 versus somebody going, slow and cautious and just get them for reckless driving of the bike in that area. We already have slippery signs up. That went up pretty quickly. So I think there's ample warnings for bicyclists. I actually think it's the best it's ever been from a design perspective. And it's happened since I've been on this commission. The blocking off pedestrians, and it's much better than Hermosa's because it is separating the bike path from the pedestrian path. And you have those contentions everywhere there's a ramp coming down to the beach. And to the north here, every place people are coming across from the condos and people coming across from the parking structures and the elevators. And yet somehow those are okay, but here we're going to penalize people for riding. So I'm all for if the city thinks there's some better signage, I'm okay with that. I think there's plenty of signs down there. But I'm against these obstacles and fining people 24/7, 365 for something that's not a problem 90% of the time.
Yeah, generally, cyclists do a pretty good job of using good judgment. It'd be interesting to see.
There's some, you can have church anytime. There's people, it says no bikes down on the pier and people riding bikes down there. You're not going to get away from that no matter what you do. And I think we're just going to cut through and exacerbate both vehicular and bicycle traffic problems and pedestrian and bicycle, because they're going to go on that outside ledge and pop back in. So.
Yes, Commissioner Walters had his hand up.
Yeah, I think I find the argument compelling that our situation is different than Hermosa. I mean, there's much more. As the path's got bikes and pedestrians, clearly a very busy area during weekends. It makes some sense. Plus, they actually have the timer that actually works. Here, I think we've got separation, which I think is a compelling argument. I do agree that the plaza area probably is an area of conflict that needs to be walked, and the bikes need to walk there. And I think I'm okay with even actually setting up barricades to kind of encourage that and enforce that issue, entering the plaza area as well as maybe ending where the bathrooms are.
Right.
But I think from that point forward, it strikes me, I don't see why the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit can't apply to everybody. Whether you're a bike, whether you're a runner, whether you're a skateboarder.
Yeah, no, I think that,
so to me, I don't know why the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit can't work. I'm not sure why we need a full survey and $10,000 study on that, honestly. We already have the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit up already, and it would work just like any other speed limit on the road, because I think we all know the speed limits on the road are largely discretionary to be enforced. You can't drive 45 miles an hour on a road if there's a lot of traffic. You'll get a ticket. So there's still discretion for the police to enforce that 5 miles an hour. If they see someone clearly being negligent, clearly being derelict, they can always stop that person and warning or issue a ticket or whatever they want to do. To me, that seems to be the right answer. To have some combination of the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is enforced all the time, right, 24 hours a day, if you will. When no one's there, they don't have to enforce it. When no one's around, someone can go 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour through there, right? At 6 in the morning, who cares, right? There's no one that's going to be harmed. Saturday at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning when there's a lot of people, maybe that's when it gets a little more enforced, right?
Right.
To me, that seems to make the most sense. If they want to put barriers up at the beginning and the end of the tunnel to kind of encourage people to slow down or get them off the bike, I think that's okay too. But after that, for the folks who don't want to walk, then get back on and ride their bike for 5 miles an hour. That's slow enough. I think that to avoid conflict to me. That seems to make the most sense.
So barriers before and after the plaza right there, you're saying at the back. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me as well.
To get off, some folks will get off, some folks don't, but at least it'll slow whoever the e-bike guy coming 30 miles an hour will have to stop and slow down. There'll be a lot of signs that say 5-mile-an-hour limit, right? And he's got to get off the bike.
Right. I think you're on to something.
Speed is the issue. I think
speed is the issue.
Can we hear from the police department?
Yes, can we hear from the police department? That'd be a good idea. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Sergeant Brian Weiss. I'm the pier sergeant. I've been assigned there. This is my second tour on the pier, but first time as a sergeant. So hopefully I'll be able to answer any questions you guys have.
Okay. How many conflicts do you get reported?
I don't have the numbers. Lieutenant King's working on it right now just to see.
Let's say ballpark in a month or let's say during the summer.
From my experience, and I haven't been down there for this summer yet because I've only been down there 3 months, there's a ton. There's a ton of near misses. There's a ton of bicycles crashing just on their own due to speed. The conflict is, in my personal opinion, the conflict isn't worth it. Kind of like you were saying, the e-bikers are moving really fast.
Yeah, I've almost been hit twice. So.
And there's a ton of little kids walking around down there. And I just don't see that there's a happy median. I've seen the crashes. Not all are reported. I think sometimes that's kind of an issue. If a bicyclist crashed, I think your friend was saying that he had crashed and hurt himself.
Yeah, and that
so we don't necessarily get the data that we would have in so many ways. I think in the past we've talked about how we changed over our records management system, so we only have data from a shorter period of time, but that's it so far.
Okay. Can you tell whether the majority of conflicts with the bicycles are e-bikes or regular bikes?
I think a lot of people want to bring up the e-bike factor. I've spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours standing down at the pier watching the bicyclists. It's all bikes.
Okay.
The e-bikes just happen to be faster.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Faster and heavier. Any other questions for the police department?
If somebody's being really negligent, if you're going, 40 miles an hour on a bike of whatever kind, and you hit somebody, is there any, the bike's at fault, is there any speed limit? Is there anything you can, say to that bike? Is there any, ticket you can write them? Is there anything you can do? Or is it just like, hey, sorry?
Ultimately, they could get a ticket for riding through there.
Okay.
Riding what?
Riding through.
Riding
through the bike path area or through the pier area. If they're riding through and they hit a pedestrian, they could get a ticket for riding through that area where they should have been walking.
So there is, all I'm asking kind of is, there is some safety net where if there were a serious problem, there would be some way you could get involved. Okay, thanks.
Correct. Yeah, if they called the police, we could definitely deal with the problem.
Thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Light.
Can you ticket or arrest a bicyclist for reckless driving?
Not that I know of.
So a kid can do a wheelie down the middle of the street and there's nothing you can do?
We can
You
use
can bust through a stop sign?
we can use the vehicle code for certain things that also will go both ways between a bike or a vehicle, like not signaling a turn or running a stop sign. We can write the vehicle code
How about not yielding to a pedestrian?
also. But
There you go.
but on a bike path, it's different. And there's a lot of different, on a roadway, it's one thing, on a bike path, it's another. Generally, because it's the city's property, the municipal code is what stands, and that's what we apply. So we're not writing tickets for speeding on the bike path. We'd be writing the municipal code for,
So if we made a code that you can't ride recklessly or endanger other people on the bike path, you could enforce that.
potentially, yes.
That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that sounds good to me as well. And it does sound like, speed seems to be a big factor here, right?
Speed is important, but I don't want to get hit by a bicycle at 5 miles an hour. And I definitely don't want a 2-year-old to get hit by a bicycle at 5 miles an hour. So I spend a lot of time down there. It's my job. I'm assigned to the pier substation, so my office is there, and I get to overlook the entire area.
What about the pedestrians to the north of this then, where they're coming off the pier elevator with a blind wall there and coming right onto the bike path? Up near Quality Seafood, the parking lot that's just outside there, there's an elevator down that starts letting out right at the bike path. And then you got to cross it to get to the pedestrian side. And it's a blind wall that's right against the,
I believe the pedestrian area is to the right of that chain.
No, I'm talking about the north end. After you're out of the parking structure, you're in the open area above International Boardwalk, and then you start to come down. There are elevators that let out right there.
This area. That's separated.
No.
That's the north end.
No, I'm talking after you're out of the parking structure.
I don't know of another elevator you're talking about.
So the bike path goes by and there's still a parking lot above you if you go from Pacific, you can go up on the upper parking deck, right?
Correct.
And then there's an elevator that comes down and lets out right at the bike path. Near, not Quality Seafood, Captain Kids. Sorry, yeah, and that big plaza area there.
We had talked about that,
Yeah. So you're okay with pedestrians cutting across there and being endangered, but not in the parking?
That's a pedestrian crossing area also that's marked and striped and signed.
Well, they're marked and striped and signed here.
I didn't design this. We can add, I mean, if what you're asking for is you want some more.
Well, I'm just,
barricades there,
you're saying there's a risk here because there's some pedestrian crossings from the parking structure where the bike lane goes into the park. There's also where it's just the exterior at the elevators. There's also ones at each ramp that comes out going to the beach if you go further south on the bike path. We can't, are you proposing we make bicyclists walk across every single place a pedestrian path crosses the bike path?
No, I think based on what Ted was saying, what I agree with is the largest points of conflict are what's most important.
Which I think, well, I kind of disagree with Mr. Saman in that I see most of the conflicts actually south of there, south of that bathroom where the main entrance to the pier is, and people are pouring down there or wandering out there, walking and not looking, and you got bicyclists trying to zoom across and through them to get through to that bike path.
Bicyclists should be walking.
Yeah.
And the pedestrians.
But this really, other than maybe changing some signs, there's nothing to address to me, the largest risk of an encounter between a bicyclist and a pedestrian in the most free-flowing area. Because you can come down Torrance onto the bike path. You can, the pedestrians are going up to the bus thing, or they're walking along, or they're coming off the beach, and showering at those showers. There's all sorts of confusing traffic in that area.
Right.
And to me, that's the much greater risk than this thing that's got big chains and pilings and signs. So.
Can I answer that?
Sure, absolutely.
Why can't we have the timers back? I know I've heard a couple of answers. I still don't understand why the timers can't come back.
With my time at the police department, I've got almost 16 years on the job. And when my first tour was, I think, 2012 or 14 for 3 or 4 years, the timers were never there. And I've heard the talk about the timers, but I've never seen the timer. I don't know where the switch is. I don't know who's in charge of it. I have no concept of the timer. My issue would be, or at least I would preface the timer with this. Mm-hmm. When's a good time?
Well, I would gather that the majority of the time, the safety concerns are fairly minimal compared to, let's say, the weekends.
Right. Weekends and holidays.
And like you said earlier, that's when discretion comes in. If I'm going to go to court and testify on a court case regarding a bicyclist riding through the pier area, I'm going to want to articulate the public safety issue, the number of violations, or signs they rode past. I have to get a judge to agree that they should have known better and they should have followed the rules. I'm not going to say, I'll say this. We have red lights all over the city and we have stop signs all over the city, and there's no time for them. They're required 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Bicyclists are required to stop at red lights and stop signs, and that's the standard.
I understand.
Law enforcement can pull somebody over, and we can still use our discretion even with a red light, just as with the pier parking thing.
Right.
But you don't make them get off and walk across every intersection.
Correct, but they do have to yield to the traffic control devices that are there. They're required by the law to do that.
Right. Right. I'll just ask a question because we're talking about this situation compared to Hermosa, and Hermosa does actually have timers on theirs, and it seems to work great.
I believe Hermosa's gone to 24/7 now.
They've temporarily gone to 24/7. They put up some barricades.
Okay, well that's new to me.
But they're afraid it's a violation of the Coastal Act.
I still don't understand why the timers can't be an option here, or why they can't be back on.
Ted, do you know what happened with that? Because originally, what was approved out of this and by the city council, there was supposed to be timers or a way to flip it on and off. I thought from the police substation or.
There were, and I think from that time that they were recommended, it's, as Sergeant Weiss was saying, when's a good time? And I don't think we were seeing enough conflicts, hearing enough conflicts.
So you never installed it?
Never got them installed, right? Because that was a recommendation, but that's a recommendation to be implemented when and how it's, when and if it's viable. And when we're hearing the complaints and we're seeing that we're not getting any clear time to say, yeah, anytime between, I'm going to be very hypothetical here, midnight till 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m., turn those lights off. We never heard that. And is that the time that the council will approve that? You know, again, if that's the council's direction, so be it. But if a pedestrian walks across and there's a conflict, do we have a good justification as to why that conflict didn't warrant the flashing light to be on versus not? I don't know at that particular point. That would be a complex.
But we have it everywhere else on the bike path. There's pedestrian crossings on every bike path, all over the place.
There are.
We don't make them stop and dismount.
Right, otherwise there wouldn't be a
And it's a
point.
yield. At those locations, it's a yield. And I think what we're seeing here, and you know, Gene and Jack at the time were much more heavily involved with this. What we're seeing today is that we're hearing that the conflict continues to exist. The conflict has been exacerbated. During the time of COVID, when everything was shut down, the riders that were there, because we closed off bike paths and other things, they cut through the parking lot instead of going through the bike path. Did any of that change since we've come out of COVID and we've reopened up everything? The answer is no. The conflict still exists. Sometimes they're less, sometimes they're more. In this particular area, and I don't disagree with you, outside of the parking structure to the south, it's a wide open plaza area. That's a very difficult one to try to corral into something manageable. It really goes down to enforcement and signage, and I believe everybody has said there's tons of signage out there today. It's really compliance and carefulness from the bicycle rider and the pedestrian. But when we receive complaints that say, hey, why are they riding here? I almost got hit by a bicyclist. We're looking for potential solutions or potential mitigations. And that's why we work closely with the police department.
Well, in a plaza area, it makes sense for the bicyclists to be required to walk.
Yeah, and
I
that's,
think the conflict area.
busy times.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
it's a short distance as well.
The issue is not that area, correct? The issue is really the parking lot area.
That's right.
Right, and
That's why
I guess,
I went through-
let me ask a question. I mean, have you looked at speed bumps to try to slow things down
That
aside
wouldn't
from
slow
this?
down a bicyclist.
It
and I
won't
can
slow down the
guarantee
bikes at
that.
all? I don't know, you guys are bikers. I mean, will that slow you?
Well, I will tell you, I don't know how many of you've noticed, but on the west side of Catalina, in front of all the condos, there is what's meant to be a bike path there.
Yeah.
There is.
On the inside of the sidewalk, on the inside, not the outside, and nobody ever uses it because it's about as narrow as the one through the parking structure. It's got sharp speed bumps all over it, and it stops at every driveway. So nobody wants to ride it. We disincentivized anybody from riding it because it doesn't function but no bicyclist wants to use it.
Yeah.
So
I can't ride it.
So you're saying the speed bump works?
the speed.
We actually received
Well, yeah, they discourage you
complaints.
from riding on it.
We actually received complaints about the pavement condition that's out there. And as a matter of fact, we've gone out, ground, and resurfaced that bike path because there are bicyclists that use it. Maybe not as much as
Very
they
few.
do the Class 2 on Catalina proper. Nevertheless, there are some.
There are far
My
more that
guys-
use Catalina
My,
than use.
understood. My guys were asking me about the speed bumps, just so first and clarifying. Speed bumps, as they are denoted in a parking lot, are not an approved traffic control device. So when the question was, hey, do we need to reinstall or remove, because we kept some of those bumps, I said, no, you grind those things out. They're not an approved traffic control device. And I can tell you as a rider, those never slow down a bicycle rider. On the contrary, you enjoy them sometimes because you can speed up and jump off of them. They're not a traffic calming device for a bicyclist. And they're not an approved traffic control device. So the answer is no, I wouldn't consider installation of them. And on the Catalina location, I actually had them grind them out.
Those were sharp
Bumps.
radius ones.
They were bumps.
And if you went fast enough, you get snake bite punctures in your bike, unless you hopped them.
Yep.
Right? And that's what the
Exactly
better
what you do.
bicyclists. But no good bicyclist would ride that because it's too narrow and there's too many stops. So
And Catalina is so much easier to ride on the Class 2. Absolutely.
exactly. So
Well, yeah, so I think we're having, us on the commission feel a little bit differently. Yes?
Public.
Oh, yes, let's, public comment. Could I?
There are no comments, and
I don't think you need to stand up here anymore.
I have some data for you.
Oh, you do?
Oh, perfect.
From April 22 to April 23, 38 bicycle incidents, 38 bicycle crashes. And that only deals with, that doesn't deal with like a single vehicle bicycle crash.
That's 24 hours?
No, 1 year.
Oh, 1 year.
1 year.
Okay.
1 year,
I
38
didn't hear the
incidents.
years. Okay. Okay.
So that's at least the data we could find. Obviously, if they're not calling and reporting, if they just crash on their own, they're not calling us, then we have no way to track them.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I have one other question for the police.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have the tools you need to deal with stuff down there? Is there anything you'd like us to recommend to the council?
I like the prohibition, the full-time prohibition. That's my personal opinion. Trying to get into the on and off solution, it just doesn't work. I sit in my office and I keep track of how many people ride. Really, the only time I get compliance down there, and I'm down there 40 hours a week, is when I stand there.
I believe you.
And the other piece of data that I've learned in the last few weeks is that the people who walk their bikes religiously have gotten a ticket in the past. Including a guy this week that said, 1996, you guys wrote me a ticket. It cost me $80. And I will never ride my bike through here again. And I don't want to come with that hard, strict compliance, but I don't want people to be hurt down there. I think that's the worst. The worst scenario would be people getting hurt over people not wanting to walk their bikes. And if I'm not standing there, people have even quipped that I should get a cardboard cutout of myself. But ultimately, the municipal code's there. I have the tool I need. I can use my discretion, and my cops can use.
And that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
And
Yeah, but only because it's a full prohibition.
Sure, but I don't want to write like another leaf blower ban regulation that does no good.
I think you run into problems also educating the public. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen our Instagram video or our social media posts about the walk your bike, but that's got like 45,000 views. It's one of the police department's best videos. We've done a ton with signage. I brought those electronic signboards down to try and add to the education campaign. And unless I stand there to this day, I don't get compliance. And with the data, I don't think it's worth it. I think I have the tool that's there. I can use my discretion, and that's the best scenario.
Yeah. I mainly deal with the bike path, further up going into other parts of the harbor. And, the red lights don't stop bikes. My truck does not stop bikes. So good luck. Thank you.
Those 38 accidents, though, you don't know where they happened, though, as far as the location along this bike path, whether they were near the plaza or.
No, I don't have the data.
Because I think that the plaza area certainly makes sense to have a very strong, and in the other areas just make it less. It's just such a long distance. It's such a long distance to ride to walk your bike all that way. And
they're not going to do it. They're going to go around it.
And I go through there all the time, and I rarely have any type of a conflict at all in that parking structure. It just seems fairly silly, actually, to me to have to walk that whole way. It just adds a lot of time to your journey.
Can we hear the e-comments?
Yeah, any e-comments? Oh, wait.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, there's no e-comments, but we do have an attendee.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, Mark Hansen, would you like to speak? Please raise your hand.
I think Mark Hansen.
Oh,
I think he just.
I think Mark wanted to speak on the earlier item, and we missed him.
Oh,
No, we called him. He didn't come.
No, he said he was trying to get, I got a text from him. He said
Oh,
he was
he
trying to get on, and he couldn't in time, and we blew by it. So I think we can open it up later for him to comment, but
I think he wants to talk about.
I don't know if he wants to talk
storage.
on this, but.
Yeah.
okay, no, he didn't raise his hand.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much. I think we can make a recommendation to the council on how we feel
Is that
about
what
this.
you want on this?
Yeah, I want some kind of a recommendation from you guys. This
Thank you.
this
thank you
event
so much.
will,
Thank you.
this discussion item will go to city council on April 18th, which is actually a short deadline. So you can do one of two things. You can direct staff to, essentially put your comments in the agenda report, or you could write a letter that displays your thought process behind this one, wherever you guys land tonight.
Let's
and
see where we land, and then we
Yeah.
can, I'm
Because
hoping
if you
it's
do the
simple
letter,
enough for you to convey it.
we
Yeah, I
need
agree.
it by, end of day tomorrow to get it kind of ready. So it would be a quick turnaround, but.
Yes.
I have three things that I would like to see put in either a letter or comments. Enforce the speed limit, install timers for heavy traffic times, and paint signage on the path. But not those horrible orange Chingadera Disneyland pathway things.
Chingadera, yeah.
The Chingaderas, yeah. I can't remember what he called them. What did?
Chicanes. I'm
Chicanes.
not sure the other one is, the other word is one we should use here.
Sorry.
Obstacles.
Going forward, we're going to call them
And
chingaderas.
that's my three comments. I totally agree that people are going to go around them.
Yeah.
It's the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be.
It's just too far. It's too far for.
And I understand the police department's frustration and the city attorney having to deal with lawsuits and things.
I'd like to hear what Roger has.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ted, I had one other question for you, and you might be able to take it from your seat. Is it possible to take bike path traffic, let's say you're coming from the south into the Pier Plaza, can you somehow spiral down Torrance Circle and enter the parking garage down where the cars do, go up that ramp, and come, so you spiral down Torrance Circle, you come up the ramp, and then you're in the middle of that upper lane of parking. And then the conflict is between cars and bicycles, which saves the pedestrians and the 2-year-olds. It's not great for the bicycles. I don't see a way to do that without putting bicycles going the wrong way down the Torrance Loop spiral. But I was wondering if that had ever been considered, or if you knew of a way there. There are some cross lanes that come across the middle of Torrance Circle. It's kind of like knowing the back roads at LAX. I don't really know them all.
Just as a side note, I was at LAX last week and I saw bicyclists going through the terminals and I thought, what are you doing here? You're not dropping off anyone, you're not picking up anyone, right?
That's what we're dealing with.
First, if they ride where vehicles go, a bicycle is a vehicle. So can they go there? Yes, they can. They have to still obey the same rules of the road? Yes, they do. Let me walk this through. If they're coming down the Torrance Circle, first, there's the entrance to come up to the upper deck, we'll call it the top deck of the parking structure.
Yeah.
The donut
Ride
deck.
all the way up until that point, and then ride down the ramp or the ramp in the parking structure and loop your way around. Yeah, that'll be legal for them to do. If they choose the alternate, which I think there are, if you go behind some of the office buildings in the plaza area up above, you'd have to go downstairs in order
Yeah, I
to
think you
make
get
it to
stuck
the
then.
north end. But that's
Yeah.
stairs. That's discontinuity from a bicycle facility, and therefore we can't necessarily recommend for them to do so. But as a bike path, I can't see us making the recommendation to shift that bike path. Can they still ride as a vehicle? Yes, they can.
So would a possible high-end expensive recommendation to the council be to put in signage on the south end of the Pier Plaza's parking structure and then a ramp on the north end of the parking structure from that upper deck down to the bike path? Make a completely separate new bike path up on the upper deck. What's another $500,000 worth of concrete?
But everybody wants to ride along the ocean.
Could it? Theoretically, yes, it can be. We would have to see, if you change the stairs and we put up some sort of a ramp for the bicyclists, We would have to accommodate now an ADA ramp for the pedestrians, because then they'd have to be accommodated as well. And it can't be just the standard ramp that's going to flow at the same rate as the
Yeah,
stairs
okay.
are. So it'll have some other complications. Can it be? Sure. Engineers can engineer anything you ask them to. Just tell us what you want, give us the time and money to get there, right? But is that an easy solution or simple solution? The answer is no.
Yeah, I did not see an easy path through there. You know, I was hoping for a better, faster bike path through all this. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Carlson. Yes,
So
Commissioner
Roger,
Light.
that's almost what was proposed under Center Cal, but there was a big rerouting of, resurfacing of the concrete, and they were going to connect Pacific all the way to Torrance there, so that.
Yeah, I understand,
That
I
helped
understand, and I was just wondering if without doing that, there was a way into
Yeah.
the parking garage. I don't think there is without doing really stupid stuff with bikes on Torrance Circle.
Yeah.
I could be wrong,
Going
I'll look at
no,
it
it
again.
had to go against
Yeah.
traffic, because that's what they did in the
Yeah.
Center Cal
Thank you,
plan.
sorry.
But my concern with people riding bikes through an actual parking garage is people are already task saturated, pulling out of a parking garage and looking for bicyclists coming up on either side while you're backing out is, I think that's a risk. And it's still, kids can run out from between parked cars and into the bicyclists. So I just don't think, I don't want people riding through I don't want the main path, because we're putting up obstacles, to be to try to cut through there, or to try to cut out on the pedestrian path on the outside on the west side of the parking garage.
Right, and I think is what this is going to accomplish. I mean, if you actually are forcing people to walk all that way through the parking structure, they're just going to ride in a different spot, right? They're going to.
Okay. Well, I made my 3 suggestions.
I do, and I like all three of them. I would just add, it seems like I think the focus should be on the plaza area, and then, definitely even barricades there through the plaza area. Okay.
Add to the comment.
So we have enforce the speed limit and install timed lights. You want the timed lights, right?
Timers for heavy traffic times.
And painting signs.
Signs.
There was a concern about slippage due to the paint.
You don't have to use slippery paint. You can use flat paint. They have flat concrete paint.
Okay.
So
Yes, Commissioner Light.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the city council to do what Vicky said, put timers on the lights, right?
For heavy traffic
Enforce
times.
5-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Horse 5 miles.
And what was paint
the
on
signage.
on the actual path itself, and I would add the pedestrian side as well.
And
the
pedestrian side as
signage.
well.
And I would like to add one is to look at a potential obstacles at where the restroom is on the south side, and where the bike path enters that big wide plaza.
Okay.
To kind of help people get off their bikes and that.
And how do we feel about barricades before and after the plaza there?
That's what I meant.
Oh, you're.
That's what I meant.
That's what I
I'm
meant.
there, yeah.
But not these orange things. I mean, like some
Okay, yeah.
fairly nice looking, looks like handrails or something that looks like it's built for that, not
They have to
some.
be very visible. They can't be.
Yeah, but you can still make it look more permanent than a plastic thing you plop down and
Okay. Can you turn that into a motion? I think you did.
It was
Do
an
we have that on?
addition.
Perfect. Yeah. Do we have a second on that?
Well,
Can I ask a
Have
have
question?
discussion on the
Yeah, I want to have some discussion on the motion. Are we just recommending timers, or are we also recommending times or rules or requirements for when things are on or
I
off?
think we should,
was heavy traffic times,
yeah.
Yeah.
which would be summer hours, weekends, events.
Like a harbor director.
Yeah.
But there is still discretion there, and
Yeah, there is discretion.
I prefer harder requirements because I go back to the lawsuit. An incident happened at like Diamond and PCH. Diamond and PCH seems like a pretty straightforward, normal, safe intersection compared to all this. And yet it was what, a $14 million lawsuit, maybe more, I forget. So
That was a death.
I thought it was a broken leg.
PCH in Nob Hill was a death.
PCH and Diamond was a broken
Diamond,
leg.
I don't know that.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that was 30. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize that part. So, you drive through PCH and Diamond, and it looks like a very straightforward intersection compared to this. And if we wind up with, 38 million liability on a simple intersection like that, I worry what we have
No
here.
matter what you do, you could get that. You could say you forced the traffic and they drove through the lot and it happened.
That was a bike accident on PCH in town?
So I'd like to let my motion.
No, I'm sorry. I think it was a pedestrian in a car.
It was pedestrian.
I think it was a pedestrian
But
car.
a pedestrian in a car is different, though. But still, motorcycle.
Second. I'll
See,
second.
wait a minute. Well,
have a
let's finish
motion
it.
and
Well, we haven't finished discussion yet on it, but.
We can still
You can
discuss.
still
Yeah.
discuss. You can't discuss until you have a motion in a second.
Right, okay. Oh, got it. Thank you. And we have a second then.
Yeah, we
Yes,
have a
continuing
second.
discussion. Huh?
I just wanted to clarify the motion there, Jim. So are we doing nothing about the prohibition? Because right now we have a prohibition the whole way.
Yeah.
Right.
So all we're addressing is,
Oh,
Miles
no, that's
an
a good
hour.
point.
so we still want the prohibition in the plaza
In the
area.
plaza area, that's correct.
Not full time,
But not full-time.
just when the lights are on.
Yeah.
Just when the lights are on.
Just when the lights are on.
Okay, so that part I wasn't clear on.
So we do want this to be real clear, right? Prohibition in the plaza when the lights are on.
Yeah, and I think
And
Roger's
speed
point's correct too. I mean, the idea of discretion on when it's busy, because I just heard the comment earlier that, well, what's a good time? I mean, so who's going to make that determination? Is it Greg?
I say Greg.
Who's going to make that determination as to when is a good time? When is it busy?
I would prefer like some set parameters. I mean, I think special events speak for themselves.
Special events,
Like weekend
holiday,
mornings.
weekends,
Weekend mornings,
holidays.
whatever, yeah, weekends, holidays.
Weekends from 9 to 10 at night.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. to 10
10,
at night.
9
yeah,
a.m. to
to
10 at
10
night.
p.m.
What we mean?
These are when the lights
The lights
are
go
Off or on?
on, when they're blinking.
The prohibition is from weekends from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. at weekend days and
All
holidays.
special events.
And special events.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I like
You
that.
accept that friendly amendment?
Well, and
And
holidays.
holidays, yeah, and holidays, yeah.
That's what I said. I said 9:30, 9 to,
9 to 10.
You said weekends.
and holidays.
And
And
holidays.
holidays. Okay. I accept that. That's a friendly amendment.
Okay, now does this motion need to get restated?
No. That's a friendly
You
amendment, and
have
I
it.
accepted it.
Okay, great.
We've got it.
Call the vote.
Any other discussion? No, let's take a vote on it. Let's do a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Walters,
Yes.
Commissioner Light,
Aye.
Chair Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Callahan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Carlson.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Passes 4-1.
Thank you so much.
And see, Jim, you thought I was going to be the
I
obstinate
did.
one.
You're banished forever.
Okay.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
guys very much.
All right, we now move to M.
Yes, I do have a director's report for you guys
Beautiful.
tonight. A couple updates. Thank you, Ted. We did do a second reading of the skateboarding and parks ordinance, which essentially allows skateboarding on the Pad 10 site. That was done on February 14th. So as of right now, even though we're not open yet, it is allowed pursuant to municipal code. It's happening. It's not open yet. We also did a sublease between RDR Properties and Mermaid Taverns for the premises at 100I and 100J Fisherman's Wharf. It's just a new lease, a new re-up on a lease in International Boardwalk. On March 14th, City Council approved the waterfront education lease. That was a CUP that this commission approved. Julie Cole officially has her lease. She has her CUP. She can begin operations as soon as she moves in. We gave her the green light to move in on April 1st.
Moved on Sunday.
There we go.
Nice.
So they're in. That's great news. We just did a new 5-year lease with International International Ice Cream on International Boardwalk. They've committed to doing a paint job and fixing some of their wood siding, kind of in contrast or to get that 5-year deal done. If you've been out at the waterfront, you're realizing that the sports fishing pier is now under demolition. It started at the end of March. That process was removing all the physical big structures that were on the pier. Now they're actually, in early April, they're demoing the pier structure itself. And the last phase will be the pilings. And they're expecting to get that done before beach life. That's the big goal.
Wow.
I think they will do that. The hand launch, which is nearby, that was also removed a few months ago due to damage during the winter storm. It's been stored on the Seaside Lagoon for quite some time. We have fixed that hand launch, but we can't place it back into its proper area until the sports fishing pier demo is done. So we have a little bit of conflict there. We do estimate getting that hand launch installed on May 15th, or roughly May 15th, just to kind of get it in there before the summer. Update on the skate park project that we kind of touched on a little bit. It started on January 18th. Did hit some of those delays due to weather. Our contractor is finishing up their actual specific scope of work, which is the concrete elements, the rails, the ramps. City staff with myself and Lori and members of our public works team did an inspection today, just a walk through, created some punch list items on some things they needed to fix still. But their job is closing up. It's almost finished. The next phase of our process is going over to Public Works. They're going to be charged with installing the railings and the additional fencing that would occur under the railing to make sure skateboards can't get underneath there and into the pedestrian walkway, and then in turn potentially into the water itself. And then there's a public art component that's going to be involved in this. The Los Angeles Kings donated some money to get that done. So that initial discussion on what that design looks like is actually happening this Wednesday.
Oh, cool.
Between the LA Kings, our city attorney, Public Works. Not sure what that's going to look like just yet. We're pushing for the art to potentially be on walls and on accent elements of the ramps themselves, but not on where the skateboards actually ride over, just for maintenance reasons.
Does the Public Art Commission have any input?
Not yet, because it's really
Okay.
This is really new information. I'd imagine they will be involved in the process, though. The bathroom, which is labeled Bathroom 5 on International Boardwalk, is currently being renovated. As of today, the flooring has been done, the paint, they did a new ceiling. All the fixtures have been removed, so it's a little gutted right now. But as of end of next week, it's anticipated that the sinks and the toilets and all the infrastructure will go back in there, and potentially within about a week and a half, we'll have a renovated bathroom. That's the one that's right by the King Harbor Brewing Company tenant space. The dredging project, so that continues to move forward. Public Works is preparing to appear before the city council in May or June. They're still kind of juggling the actual date. The idea is to get council's approval on the job specs so that they can start that low bid process. If they can get that competitive bid process going, then obviously the work can occur. A part of that consideration by council is going to be a letter that I've drafted that contains your concerns as a group related to the dredging project. And that's inclusive of making sure all the sand gets dumped out of harbor and we get some kind of oversight from a third party consultant, contractor, what have you, to make sure that the environmental components that are detailed in the permit are actually followed. Okay. Sea bass pens update. City Council approved the 2 pen option to be placed at our preferred location in Basin 3. We did outline some grant opportunities to pay for it, but City Council actually didn't want to wait that long, understanding that grants can take a little bit of time. They actually directed staff to come back at the mid-year budget process, to actually ask for the $70,000 so we can get it going faster. So we're in line to do that. An update on the harbor patrol docks. Obviously, this is the full removal of the current docks, piles, and pump out stations. The new construction date is April 17th. That's when we're going to start. We estimate that the initial construction will kind of wrap up June 26th, with subsequent inspections and any kind of corrective work being needed as a result of those inspections. And they're really kind of anticipating a mid-July kind of grand reveal, grand opening where everything's done. Some upcoming events. Beach Life is upon us, May 6th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. We're preparing for that with internal staff meeting last week. We're meeting with Alan Sanford, the producer, next week, or this week, actually, Thursday, to make sure there's expectations and, we all know what the process is going to be. We want everyone to be on the same page. And then I've got some subcommittee updates. The Seaside Lagoons subcommittee, we met on January 10th. Since then, we did enter into a contract with Nuvis On March 30th, staff conducted a kickoff meeting where it was Public Works, Planning, Building Safety, Waterfront. We all met with them to talk about, expectations, communication styles. They walked us through a software program we're going to be utilizing to keep everybody on track and moving forward as a group. It's a large group. What's next is we're going to be scheduling another subcommittee meeting. I do expect, we have kicked around some dates with Nuvis, so the subcommittee members can expect on Thursday an email to go out with some options regarding some dates, where it's not just going to be a subcommittee meeting. We're going to be inviting some stakeholders, specifically Captain Kids, On the Rocks, and Rubies, to keep them in the process of design. Obviously, the Beach Life Festival is paramount. It's two events per year, draws a lot of people. It needs, or whatever our final design is, needs to accommodate things like this. So we want to bring them on board during the design process. Dry boat storage subcommittee, we did meet on February 9th. We gave ourselves some homework. We're still working on that homework, and once we're finished looking at nearby marinas and what they do and what sizing requirements are, just got to get a parameter of what's doable, what's needed, we're going to meet again. So some emails are ongoing on that. The Waterfront Education Subcommittee, no real updates here. We are still under contract with Gensler Architects. They are doing those conceptual drawings to kind of show us what could possibly be built, what's the building envelope out there. Staff did meet with them, I think it was at the end of March, maybe early April. We went through some constraints, some opportunities. We went through some of the municipal code requirements, some of the parking ramifications to kind of paint them a sandbox, if you will, and make sure they understood, what the limitations are before they maxed out that building envelope so we can advertise what this thing could be. They are, at this point, got some design concepts that I've yet to see yet. Staff is working with them to set up a meeting on April 12th where they're going to walk us through some of those things. They do plan to get in front of City Council to present these ideas. Their scope of work didn't include a stop here, but I don't mind coming by after the fact and showing you just exactly what we've got so you can ask questions and things like that. And the last subcommittee is the outdoor dining along the top of International Boardwalk, and I don't have an update for that one. There's been no movement on that one. That concludes my director's report. I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Walters.
Quick question. I know it's been only 4 or 5 months, but any status on the California Surf Club construction at Alan Sanford's project?
Yeah, he's got building permits in. I don't think he's got them issued just yet. I believe his attention is now at Beach Life, but as soon as that's over with, I think he's going to be back up and running. We're also reworking the lease wording on all these standalone buildings. Right now, we were using some kind of outdated terminology in a lot of these standard contracts. So while we were renegotiating with them, we're kind of modernizing the leases for standalone buildings, and that's in with the city attorney's office right now. Once we get that standardized, his lease will become final. The negotiated lease will become final, and I think you'll see more urgency in his building permit process, knowing he's got his lease secured.
Yeah, I recall he had part of the project was somewhat expedited. He wanted to get, I think, implemented within a year, I think. Right. Did the council approve his easement? There was an issue with easement, that one part of the property. Not yet. So term, price has all been negotiated. Obviously, we're modernizing the lease, but when we return to council with that modern lease, we're going to talk about the easement. I see. Okay.
Very nice. Commissioner Callan.
A comment and a question. It feels really good to see all the work that we've put in coming to fruition, finally. I mean, some things take so long and others seem to manifest quickly, so I'm thrilled.
Thank you.
My question is, what's going on with Joe's Crab Shack?
Joe's Crab Shack, yeah. So we've met at closed session with City Council several times on that. Essentially, we're in negotiation, so I can't divulge too much, but we're going to get a replacement tenant over there for a short
What happened to waterfront education going in there?
That's still part of the larger grand scheme of things. That hasn't wavered, but this will be more of a short-term solution.
Okay. That's all I had.
Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Light.
Today I noticed they were painting the metal roofing or flange or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that part of the beautification program? Is it a joint thing with the
It's-
city or?
It's not the beautification programs. The city council actually allotted a budget for that project to paint that, I guess you call it a turquoise kind of metal roof up there. Just to, I mean, it is a modernization, but it's a city paid for modernization.
But it's not that joint program where they're
No.
beautifying their storefront?
We're just doing it. It's not a part of the storefront improvement program. It's a base hit. We wanted to liven it up a little bit, get a fresh coat of paint. Additional paint will be being applied in front of the skate park as well, just to kind of freshen that side of that parking garage up. Just to kind of liven it up a bit. Storefront improvement program is going to be everything below that metal awning. It's going to be the sign band is what we're calling it,
Right.
and then the elevation
What about
itself.
the paving that was approved for down there?
That's in design right now, and when I say design, Public Works is really looking at weight right now. They're doing calculations on what kind of materials can be supported. So we're still working that out, but it's a CIP project that's making progress.
That's good to hear.
I had one other one and now I forget.
Anyone else? All right, unless that pops back into your head, we'll move to commission items and referrals to. Wait,
I have a request.
He's got a request.
Since we closed the non-agenda items and there was somebody who couldn't close on doing that, would the chair mind reopening that? so
Not
we
at
can-
all. Yes, let's open up back up to non-agenda items. And is Mark Hansen still out there?
Yes, he's raising his hand.
Nice. Let's hear from Mark Hansen.
You may speak, Mark.
Can you hear me this time?
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
hear
Mark.
you.
We can hear you.
Again.
I've lost all volume on you guys.
Oh,
So
no.
The system has not worked well this evening.
We can do some sign language. We can
I have
hear
no idea
you.
what to do to.
We hear you.
Yeah, we hear you okay. We can hear you fine.
I'm unmuted. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can. I don't know if you
Oh,
can see me.
God, finally. Geez, it's been hard tonight. I got to tell you, sometimes Harbor Commission meetings are the very hardest Zoom meeting for people to attend. I get calls all the time for people who can't get on. Anyway, thank you so much for dialing me back in here. Mark Hansen, wearing my hat as Staff Commodore of King Harbor Yacht Club. Good evening to the commissioners and staff. I just wanted to make a report that King Harbor Yacht Club held their opening day ceremonies on Sunday, April 2nd. This was the 74th boating season for the club, which was formed back in 1960 by the merger of two smaller clubs. Built the clubhouse in 1964. We had guests ranging Commodores from various clubs up and down the coast, San Diego to Santa Barbara, as well as leadership from the regional boating associations and quite a few leaders from angler clubs. Councilman Todd Lowenstein represented Mayor Bill Brand in the city of Redondo Beach and provided updates on the planned harbor improvements, which were met with a lot of applause. But the line that got the most applause was moving forward on dredging. So it's interesting how you can gauge what's important to people at some of these meetings. The city's proclamation congratulated the club for winning the Senior Yacht Club of the Year award from among 88 boating clubs in the Southwest. Several of our members won regional awards. A name you'll all be familiar with is Julie Call, who won the regional award for supporting women's sailing. Senior city staff was well represented by Fire Chief / Harbor Master Pat Butler and Deputy Public Works Director Mike Klein, who were very warmly received by the boaters for all their efforts and their staff efforts in protecting and then repairing the harbor during the recent storms. LA County Representative Jesselyn Waldron, representing Supervisor Holly Mitchell, provided a proclamation, and the offices of Congressman Liu, State Senator Ben Allen, Assemblyman Murasucci, all sent certificates recognizing the club's contributions to regional boating activities. Our local water safety professionals were very well represented by the city's Harbor Patrol, County Baywatch, and the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. The U.S. Naval Cadets provided the color guard, looked very sharp in their well-pressed naval uniforms. So spring is here. It's warming up. Boating activity is increasing, notably in 3 days. On Thursday, our Thursday twilight races will begin. The public's encouraged to come down and volunteer to crew in a sailboat race. Of course, lots of opportunity for paddle sports and fishing in the harbor. So we want to encourage the community to come down and enjoy their harbor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark Hansen. All right. Any other? No, I don't believe there's anybody else out there, right? All right. So at this point, we move to adjournment.
No.
Oh, we move to recommendations for the staff. That's right. Referrals to staff.
Nope, I'm good.
Jim?
I remembered my actually two questions. So the first is any progress on grants for the boat ramp?
Not since the last meeting, but we are working with D-Ball right now to start that process. The boat ramp grant funding opportunity is huge. They're looking to pay for likely 90% of this thing, but a lot of the pre-planning isn't covered. So the entitlements, the studies that we need to do actually need to be funded by city council in the budget process. So we need to get that approved in our budget so that we can start those studies. And D-Ball said, once we're kind of halfway or starting that, we can start the grant process for what they call pre-planning, which is really the second phase in our rationale, which is once entitlements are in place, getting permits, getting drawings converted into construction style drawings from concept to construction ready documents, and ultimately construction. So in working, we're going to be working with D-Ball closely to kind of time that right. But we essentially need to get money from city council to start the studies and the entitlement process first.
Okay, thanks. And then the second one was, I know I've been approached, I don't know if any of you have been approached with complaints about the additive fees for the King Harbor Marina. Are you looking into that? Have you received complaints?
We're looking into that. Yeah, we're looking into the existing lease that we have on record. I'm working with the city attorney's office to get their opinion on it and the city manager's office. The language is a little vague in terms of what they're allowed to do for fees. It essentially calls out the right from the city to be able to kind of question the fees every once in a while and perform a study from other nearby marinas and other, within Redondo Beach master leaseholds that do the same thing. And then to perform an analysis and make sure whatever they're charging is akin to everybody else. I'm making sure that, with the city attorney's office, that the language includes these added fees. Are they considered a part of the slippage fee? They're essentially creating additional fees without saying they're adding to the slippage fee. So I'm making sure the city attorney's office is on the same page as me by being able to combine those two things, but I'm not sure yet.
The one complaint I got, one of them was, if you combine them all, the rates went up 25%. I don't know what size slip this guy has, but basically he's seen a 25%.
It's astronomical.
So,
yeah.
And I know Dana Point Harbor is going through a big lawsuit because they raised their slip fees without doing the proper study. And
yeah, one of my concerns is, are the fees that we're being charged actually doing what they say they're being used for? Or are they just going in somebody's pocket?
Good
That's another good question, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
That's it. Thank you.
Nothing from me. Commissioner Callahan?
No, I just put my 2 cents in.
Perfect. Commissioner Carlson?
Can we somehow heat up the ocean so that we don't need wetsuits?
Yeah.
Should I have asked that when Ted was here?
Yeah, but that's actually happening for you. It's
Just really
you just need to drive.
Good.
You need to drive a bigger car, and it'll just help that along.
Okay.
All right. If
Motion
I need
to
a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn,
So moved.
and I have a second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I declare this meeting adjourned. 8:18. Thank you so much. By the way.
Thank you.